Without reference to file, we're going to take up SB 79. Mr. Secretary, please read.
Senate Bill 79 by the Committee on Budget and Act relating to Human Services and making an appropriation therefore to take effect immediately. Bill related to the budget.
Senator Leno.
Thank you, Madam President. Senators, this is our Human Services trailer bill, and provisions in it will require that the Department of Social Services Community Care Licensing Division, which monitors and certifies nearly 66,000 facilities such as group homes, child care homes, residential care facilities for the elderly, to increase inspection frequency. Also authorizes counties to continue a very successful program which we initiated last year, which provides CalWORKs supportive housing, make sure that those who are transitioning from CalWORKs to full-time employment, going through job training, job seeking and placement, have a roof over their heads for themselves and their families as they pursue their goal. It also makes technical amendments to last year's establishment of the approved relative caregiver program, which will provide equitable payments for relative caregivers of foster children. It also makes other changes to improve child support collection and authorizes data sharing agreements between governmental agencies. I ask for your aye vote.
Debate or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Mr. Secretary, I'm sorry, did you wish to? Please, Mr. Secretary. He said no. All right, Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Allen. Aye. Anderson. Yep. No. Bates. Bell. Aye. Berryhill. Block. Aye. Cannella. Aye. De Leon. Aye. Fuller. Gaines. No. Galgiani. Aye. Glazer. Aye. Hall. Aye. Hancock. Aye. Hernandez. Aye. Hertzberg. Aye. Hill. Aye. Hueso. Huff. Aye. Jackson.
Aye.
Aye. Lara. Aye. Leno. Aye. Leva. Aye. Liu. Aye. McGuire. Aye. Mendoza. Mitchell. Aye. Monning. Aye. Morlock. No. Morrell. Wynn. Aye. Nielsen. No. Pan. Aye. Pavley. Roth. Aye. Runner. Aye. Stone. No. Vidak. Aye. Wykowski. Aye. Wolk. Wolk aye.
Please,
Pavley aye.
please call the absent members.
Bates. No. Berryhill. Aye. Fuller. No. Hueso. Aye. Mendoza. Aye. Morrell.
Ayes 32, noes 7. Assembly amendments are concurred in. Moving along, SB 83, without reference to file, SB 83. Senator Leno, excuse me, Mr. Secretary, please read.
Senate Bill 83 by the Committee on Budget and Act relating to public resources and making appropriation therefore to take effect immediately. Bill related to the budget.
Senator Leno.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, this is our resources trailer bill. Among other things, it provides accountability measures for the Department of Toxic Substances Control and the Department of Conservation. Following the Senate oversight hearings conducted this spring, many issues in both of those departments will be addressed. Adjust the state's management of illegal fireworks, an ongoing issue that will finally reach resolution. It also updates and modifies power plant siting and drinking water fees. It allows for the continuing delivery of payment in lieu of taxes to counties with state wildlife areas, something I know that we'll be discussing among many of our members today. It also makes various other changes necessary to implement the resources, environmental protection, and energy budget items. I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Senator, under debate or discussion, Senator Nielsen.
Madam President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I urge a no vote, if no other reason than for the fact that this continues the hollow promises to the counties of California that for decades have suffered the lack of good faith of its government. What do I mean? When local jurisdictions have agreed to take land off the tax rolls for wildlife, state wildlife areas, to preserve habitat and wildlife. The promise of the state was that they would get some in lieu of reimbursement, kind of like we had for the Williamson Act, where farmers could take land and agree not to put it into other than farm use. But this is for wildlife areas. Department of Fish and Game, year after year after year, has refused to pay. Senators Walk and McGuire and I worked very hard on this. Senator Walk, she carried a bill that I've authored with her 2 years in a row, been left on suspense, continuing the hollow promise to our counties. Well, we succeeded in getting some money in it. One time, $8 million in the conference report. But somewhere between then and now, it got changed. No $8 million, even a meager promise met, but rather a requirement that the Fish and Game pay these taxes of in lieu, a requirement, folks. What hypocritical lie this is, only when appropriated by the legislature. Well, the legislature hasn't appropriated it. The administrations have not fought for it year after year after year. So we're going to continue this fight. Those senators who represent these many, many districts, there's a heck of a list of them, Democrat, Republicans as well. Their counties are suffering this hollow promise. Now, I've gone a little further in conference committee. I said that from now on, because of the failure of government to keep its promises to local government, whenever there are wildlife areas considered for the areas that I represent, I'm going to ask them to not go along with it, to oppose it, until the state keeps its promise. Another onerous provision now is the well logs are going to be public information for everybody to see. Now, many of us have wells, domestic, industrial, even municipal wells, as well as agricultural wells. So do you want all your well log data all over the evening news? If you do, support this bill, because that's where we're going. An open season on something that ought to be pretty private information. I submit this kind of public feast does not help us manage our groundwater resource, nor does it encourage anyone who has a well to do so either. That's a very onerous provision. Now we're going to have a new siting fee for electrical generation facilities, $5,000. What's that all about? Another fee by government. Why does government want more fees? Oh, so they don't have to be dependent on the general fund. So is that good for us? Not really, because now we have another fee imposed on the citizens, but their taxes don't go down commensurately. No. That money gets spent on other things, increasing our base. It increases fees of $15 million on our water agencies for safe drinking water programs. You know, they just don't happen to like that. And then to create a new agency, or a department rather, or no, excuse me, a position of government that I question. Assistant Director of Environmental Justice, $200,000 for that department. So what is it going to do? That's a question I ask. Most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, I ask for a no vote, or at least an abstention on this one, to take a stand that the state of California keep its promises to our citizens. I urge a no vote or an abstention.
Thank you, Senator Nielsen. Before we continue the debate, I note that we have with us this morning former Assembly Minority Leader of the state legislature, and oh yes, somebody who's kind of got a good position there in Washington. But could we all give a warm welcome to our former colleague and now Congressman Kevin McCarthy. Welcome. All right, let's continue with the debate or discussion. We have Senator Wieckowski.
Madam Speaker, or Madam President, I rise to express my dismay with the administration. Included in this trailer bill is legislation or language that sets up an independent review board for the Department of Toxic Materials, a three-panel board to review the backlog and how to expedite the backlog that they had. 2 days ago, the Senate Environmental Quality Committee had the director of DTSC before us on this very issue of what the backlog was. And the governor did not authorize the director. There was no communication between the executive branch and the co-equal branch of government, the California State Senate, on what was going on. And I can't continue to conduct oversight hearings in the environmental arena if we don't get some cooperation with the administration on what they are planning. And it really chaps me that I'm going to be voting on a trailer bill on something 48 hours ago. They're not truthful enough to tell us what they have planned. Now, there was other things in here that I had my dismay with. I just want to limit my remarks to that and say we've got to change, and the man downstairs in the horseshoe has got to change the way that he's communicating with the co-equal branch of government.
Thank you, Senator Wieckowski. Your chapness is noted. Senator McGuire.
Good morning, Madam President. Thank you so much. I'd like to, first of all, thank the Budget Chair and committee and staff on the hard work on this trailer bill. I rise today to talk, as Senator Nielsen did, on the payment in lieu of taxes. I proudly represent some of the most rural and, quite frankly, poorest counties in the state of California. And in many of the counties I represent, half to 85% of the land mass is owned by the state and the federal government. The payment in lieu of taxes program was created with the intention of alleviating the effects of the state's land acquisition policies on taking county revenues. And unfortunately, adequate funding for this program has not been provided since 2001, $19 million to rural counties in this California. And the burden to be able to govern those counties to figure out how to be able to provide the base services for the residents on reduced revenues is left up to them without a good dance partner here at the state. PILT is not a gift to counties. It's a long-term commitment from the state government to compensate rural counties due to the fact that tens of thousands and sometimes hundreds of thousands of acres are taken off their county's tax rolls. Imagine 40,000 acres in an urban county taken over by the state and taken off the tax rolls. And remember that you still have the responsibilities to be able to pay for police, pay for fire, and the infrastructure to ensure that your communities are going to thrive. Rural California is still struggling to recover from the Great Recession, and many businesses in the North Coast remain closed, and many have permanently closed down. And I cannot stress enough, and I'm going to wrap it up right here, Madam President, how critical this reimbursement is for rural California and for these rural counties. And I would hope coming up next fiscal year, we are going to continue those payments to ensure that rural California is going to thrive in this economic recovery. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Wolk, followed by Senator Papley.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to rise in support of this trailer bill. There's a great deal of good that is coming to California through the Resources Budget Act, and I really encourage you to take a look at all the items that are being suggested. And I would just like to hit a couple of them before I speak to the PILT issue, which we spent a good deal of time on. Thank you to the Budget Committee and the Budget Committee Chair. There is accountability, as was mentioned, not sufficient, but some for the toxic substances control. Issues, oil and gas, Dogger, not sufficient, but there is movement forward. The issue of well logs is very important to the treatment of drought in California. There is net metering issues, fireworks management. There's a tremendous amount in here that is good for the state. Now, I want to speak, as my colleagues have, to the issue of PILT, payment in lieu of taxes. We spent time on that in the committee, and I'm not going to add much time to that. The issue for me is that this is not a promise that can be easily abrogated. It was a promise, and I've looked at the research. Back in 1989 was the last time this law was amended. So it's not brand new and out of the blue. It, in fact, Mr. McCorkadale was the one who last amended. This is a long-standing policy, as was described by my colleagues. What really is the issue here is that in addition to yesterday, and that was clarified in the Budget Committee, that the administration believes that, one, it is not obligated to make this payment. It is not obligated to make the past payments. It is making a payment this year, and that's important, and that's a good thing. But at the same time, they're changing the law in the trailer bill so that no future administration will be required, that is, shall make the payment. It will be discretionary. I think that that is clearly short-sighted. We have Proposition 1 and Proposition 1E, and there will be purchases in counties. Counties are the land use authority in the unincorporated areas. In order for that to happen, supervisors will ask about the taxes that leave the rolls as they are asked to provide many services for the counties. And it will just add to the sense, and counties have been great partners with the governor's office and with finance, and frankly, it's a poke in the eye. It is a promise broken. It is a law that exists and that we are going to change. Nonetheless, there is a great deal of good in this resources trailer bill, and I ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Wolk. Senator Pavlik.
Yes, just briefly, I rise in support of this resources budget bill, but just wanted to give a little insight into one of the measures on this list of trailer bills here, and it's relating to well logs. This House has voted in favor of well logs and having that information available to people in narrow circumstances. You know, you can't manage what you don't measure. You need to measure water supply and availability. All the other Western states make this information available. Not only make it available to public, let's say you're a neighboring property owner, you want to know how deep you should build your well. We'd like some information about what other neighbors are doing. You want to know about the geology or hydrology. All the other Western states make this information easily available. In fact, 10 states put it online. It's public information in the public domain. It makes sense to me. But in an abundance of caution and listening to some concerns people had, what we've done with making this information available in narrow circumstances, that if someone wanted to know what was going on in their groundwater basin in order to put in their own well or replace a septic tank, and they want to know about the geology and hydrology, you have to go to the Department of Water Resources. You have to fill out a form. You have to not only say who you are, your address, but why you need the information. It's part of a public record. This is a common sense bill. It's been supported by the administration. We voted for it several times in a row. Ask for your aye vote on this resources trailer bill.
Thank you, Senator Pavlik. Senator Stone.
Thank you, Madam President. It was understood when we got here, I thought that we'd be writing bills and reviewing bills that were single subject matter. And there are a lot of trailer bills that I like a lot of the components of some of them, and I don't like the components, other components of the bill. And it's hard to understand how we live by one set of rules, and then at the very end, we have a potpourri of bills that is just loaded with things that are completely unrelated to one another. But with respect to SB 83, I can guarantee you, as a former county supervisor, that each and every one of you are going to hear from your boards of supervisors in your respective jurisdictions, because this is a promise, and I'm getting to the in lieu taxes, that has been made and has not been kept. And it's been a very successful program in my county. We have probably one of the most successful habitat conservation plans, not only in the state of California, but probably in the country. We have a master take permit with the federal government and the state where we have to acquire 153,000 acres of land, and we've already acquired over 45,000 acres of land, in which a lot of that land is eligible for in lieu property taxes. So the County of Riverside is one of the largest beneficiaries of this in lieu tax, and they are going to take it in the shorts because the state isn't keeping their commitment. So once again, you know, this is a very nervous time for those in local government because they often ponder, as I did for 22 years, what the heck is the state of California going to take from us this year, or what is going to be the unfunded mandate that's going to be imposed on us at the local government level? You know, many of us came from local government, and I would expect more of us to protect local government. But there just seems to be something in the water here in Sacramento. They drink the water, they get to the legislature, and they forget where they came. I urge you that are from local government to protect local government, keep promises that are kept, and I urge a no vote for those reasons on SB 83.
Thank you, Senator Stone. Senator Allen.
I just wanted to say that as someone coming from an urban county who didn't know very much about this issue, that I very much stand in support of what the senator from Davis, the leadership role that she's playing on this issue. You know, ultimately, the last thing we want to do is disincentivize counties from feeling comfortable turning over beautiful, natural resource-rich, recreation-rich, pristine parkland to the state for preservation. We've got so little land left for people to enjoy, you know, I think this is just an unfair thing that the state has done with regards to our rural counties, and I just hope that the senator will continue this effort, and I will stand in support.
Thank you very much. All debate having ceased, Senator Leno, you may close.
Thank you, Madam President. I stand in solidarity with many of the comments made with regard to this payment in lieu of taxes. And I hope the governor has listened to the debate, because for a relatively small amount of money, $8 million, we can keep promises that have been made to counties. What a relatively small cost to keep the trust and bond between state and county governments. Prospectively, it's even much more minimal. $644,000 in this year's budget, which will pay for payment in lieu of taxes in the budget year. So we're talking about approximately $500,000 prospectively, $8 million to keep the promises that have been made. It's a worthy investment. Beyond that, the resources bill has great value to the state of California, and for many reasons, I ask for your aye vote.
All debate having ceased, Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Allen? Aye. Anderson? No. Bates? No. Bell? Aye. Berryhill? No. Block? Aye. Cannella? No. De Leon? Aye. Fuller? Gaines? No. Gaggiani? Glazer? Aye. Hall? Aye. Hancock? Aye. Hernandez? Aye. Hertzberg? Aye. Hill? Aye. Hueso? Huff? No. Jackson? Aye. Lara? Aye. Leno? Aye. Leva? Aye. Liu? Aye. McGuire? Aye. Mendoza? Aye. Mitchell? Aye. Monning? Aye. Morlock? No. Morrell? No. Wynn? No. Nielsen? No. Pan? Aye. Pavley? Aye. Roth? Runner? No. Stone? No. Vidak? No. Wachowski? Aye. Wolk? Wolk, aye.
Please call the absent members.
Fuller? No. Galgiani? Hueso? Aye. Roth? Aye.
Ayes 25, noes 14. Assembly amendments are concurred in. Moving along, we will go to SB 88 without reference to file. Senate Bill 88. Mr. Secretary, please read.
Senate Bill 88 by the Committee on Budget, an act relating to water and making an appropriation therefore to take effect immediately. Bill related to the budget.
Senator Leno.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, this is our drought trailer bill, and of the 13 trailer bills that we're dealing with today, it probably had the most discussion in Budget Committee among them all. I think both because it was the last one that we received, and it certainly touches on the biggest issue that the state is dealing with today, and that is our ongoing drought. But I would say that my support for it is because of the fact that there are over 1 million Californians who tragically cannot even drink the water coming out of their own tap. They can't shower, can't flush their toilets. They're living in conditions that we can't imagine exist here in California. It is a dire emergency situation, and for that reason, bold steps need to be taken, and I believe that was the impetus for the governor delivering this to us. And of course, process not always being what we would like, it does take time to find agreement between the houses and the administration to move something forward. Because of our advocacy, I think this bill is much better than the way it was originally introduced to us. So through negotiations, we've got a supportable bill. It expands local enforcement authority and provides for tiered penalties for violations that show intent and a substantial nature of the violation. It requires diversions of over 10 acre-feet per year to have a measuring device. The delta is exempted for 1 year due to the current curtailment order by the Water Board. It also authorizes the Water Board to require consolidation of water systems in disadvantaged communities and areas with problematic water systems. I know we'll have debate on that. I'll make some comments in my closing relative to it. It provides a one-cycle CEQA exemption for dual plumbing projects and also provides a very limited CEQA exemption for certain water recycling pipeline projects. I ask for your aye vote.
With all debate having ceased. Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Nielsen, I didn't see you. Senator Nielsen, followed by Senator Walk.
Thank you, Madam President, and ladies and gentlemen of the Senate. This is a very significant bill, and I would hope that there be a lot more microphones up on something that is going to so affect almost all Californians. It is about our water. And my choice of words, our, is important because this legislation runs roughshod over water rights. You talk about government keeping promises, water rights, kind of where it starts. A year ago in so-called drought legislation, evidencing that this emergency situation to being capitalized for some very dangerous laws. Legislation gave the Water Board, in effect, dictatorial control over historic water rights that date back to the mid-1850s when we started doing water law in this state. That protected the water rights of the areas of origin, of the so-called pre-1914 rights holders, of the senior water rights holders. I debated that, and I didn't prevail. Some members of my own party voted for this bill a year ago. However, sadly, the prophecy was correct. A couple of months later, Governor declares a drought emergency, and under that law, he has much broader powers, he or she, to declare a drought emergency. It's much easier. You can just almost do it. And when that happens, the board, Water Board, has the ability to put forth regulations that are exempted from the Office of Administrative Law, meaning there's no public review of those regulations. Obviously, there'd be little, if any, legislative review of those regulations. And then right thereafter, they then usurped junior water rights, saying, we're taking your water, carefully acknowledging, and I appreciated the chair doing that very much, because she has, frankly, though I'm being critical of the board, she has been very sensitive to certain things that I'm speaking of. But then they did say in that order, but we have the ability to take senior and pre-1914 water rights, which now they are doing. Last year, senior, this year, even pre-1914 water rights. If this is such a good idea to consolidate all of these districts, I wonder why all the special districts came last night and opposed it. You in local government know about LAFCO. LAFCO said, get out of our business. They said they are trying to work with things, but these were not appropriate solutions. LAFCO's been around 52 years. We don't need you, state. And you know what? They're right. The special districts are very concerned about what this will mean to them. And they then are being empowered to have water police to come and inspect our wells, water police. Now, there's no requirement that these individuals have any knowledge of water at all. Now, I guarantee you in a few years they're going to want to become sworn peace officers too. I'm not saying that facetiously. That will happen. But let's get to where they would be this time next year, coming onto our private property and telling us in terms of our wells, well, you're only going to be able to pump so many hours a day. Now, that can be your domestic well, too. Don't find any comfort in the 10-acre feet. By regulation, they can change that. And they will. And if you are a municipality that gets water from the ground, don't think that they're going to be leaving you alone. The water police will be after you, too, and that will be reflected in your water rates. Because not only can they fine you, they can order you to do certain things, like pull up that well casing and change it, because there's some kind of new device that we, the state, say you need to put on to conserve water. I find that a very onerous intrusion. Very egregiously is the process. We were apprised of this somewhere around 10 o'clock, 10:20 yesterday. Now, this is major policy decision, of the most major this institution is ever going to see. And we're getting it just a couple of hours before the Budget Committee is to meet. That is reprehensible. This should be defeated on those grounds alone. And in no way can this deliberative body claim that it is deliberative, because in this case it absolutely is not. Senatoris est civitatis libertatem tueri. It's our job to protect the people. Well, we're selling the people down the river, literally, on this. Because a lot of people have those rights. If you have a domestic well, historically groundwater has been a private property right. That's your water. Now you're going to have the meddlesome hand of government in your business. And so is this going to solve the drought problem? Hardly. We already talked, by the way, about the other legislation about the well logs being available to the world. I don't know how much more invasion of privacy we can put up with as private citizens around here. Sound like we don't have any rights at all. But particularly our water rights. And we're selling out the generations to come. Their rights to water now are compromised. Compromised by, in the dark of night, behind closed doors, secretly concocted legislation thrown on our desks, and us expected to cast intelligent votes on behalf of the people we represent. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to stand up for rights for the people of California, protecting private property and justice. Vote no. If nothing else, abstain, because you really don't know what you're voting on, because we've not had time to deliberate and there's been no policy. at the least, I urge you to abstain, but better yet, a no vote.